Good morning, everyone. This is Anukta Gerola from the Department of History, Salesian College Autonomous, Siliguri. Today, we would be discussing about a very important topic of medieval Indian history. We would be discussing about the land revenue system of Mughal Emperor Akbar. But before we discuss more about the ways in which Mughal Emperor collected revenue, it is important for us to understand three key portions. That is, what exactly was land revenue system, how was it collected, and what were the various ways through which land revenue was collected. So now let's talk about the first topic, that is, what exactly is the land revenue system. Students, as you know, land revenue system was the primary source of financial sustenance. This is the major chunk of money that Mughal rulers used to get, through which they could then establish their empire. Now, state was very conscious about how was it collecting land revenue and how the land revenue was coming to them. Therefore, we find that the main aim of the state was to channelize the inflow of land revenue and make sure that it is coming in a steady, systematic manner. Akbar made several attempts to control the land revenue system, not only in the fertile Indo-Gangetic plain, but also in the areas that were far away from his area. Now, one thing that should come to your mind is, how do we know so much about Akbar's land revenue system? And therefore, we have to first understand what are the sources. Now, the most important and primary source of Akbar's reign is Ain-e-Akbari. So, Ain-e-Akbari has given us details about what was the land revenue mechanism under Akbar. How was it collected? Where was it collected? Who all were involved in this system? The other option was the Ain-e-Dehsala. Ain means a mirror and Dehsala means for 10 years. So the mirrors for 10 years was something that Akbar collected from every Suba. Every Suba had its own record of what was the revenue for the next 10 years. Also, we find there were several royal farmans sent to Mughal officials about how much revenue can they collect. What exactly is the revenue mechanism that they have to follow. Therefore, all these are our sources. So, now let's talk about one of the most important and very interesting topic. What is land revenue? What exactly is this term? Is it rent or is it tax? If it is rent, students, one thing that you have to understand is rent is paid irrespective of whether agricultural produce is happening or not happening, while tax is always if you are producing. So understand one thing, under Mughal India, we were paying land tax, not land rent. What does that mean? That means we were only paying tax on the produce, not on the land. Therefore, it was very important for Mughal rulers to understand how much are the peasants producing, or in which land are peasant producing. If the peasant is not producing anything on a piece of land, then there will be no tax. If the land is under cultivation, only then will the peasant has to pay the tax on it. Now, the next topic that is important for us to understand is what was the magnitude, or what magnitude means is how much was it collected. What is the right amount, the exact amount that the peasant had to pay to the Mughal rulers. Now, there are several talks about different levels of taxes that were added, but land revenue, or what we call as land tax, the magnitude was fixed by Akbar, which was 1/3 of the produce. So if as a peasant I am producing 30,000 kgs of rice, the share of the state or share of the Mughal ruler would be 1/3 of the 30,000 kg. That means it would be 10,000 kg that I have to pay as land revenue to the king. Now, Abul Fazl, the famous Abul Fazl from Akbar's time period, his friend, his confidant, his writer, has talked about land revenue in detail. He has given justification why Mughal ruler collected this revenue. He argues that this was a bilateral tie between king and his subjects. So the king is giving you protection, king is trying to make sure that there is peace and stability in the entire empire, and that's why the subjects have to pay a tax to the king for this protection. And therefore he is justifying that Akbar's demand for 1/3 of the produce that he is taking as land tax is actually a justified mechanism, because what he is giving to his subjects is peace, stability for them to continue cultivation. And student, this will become a very important concept when we would discuss about the ways in which this mechanism was taking place. Now, next topic that we need to discuss about is what were the mechanism of land revenue under Akbar. Was there only one way, or were there multiple ways through which Akbar collected tax? Now, one thing that you have to understand very clearly is that land assessment or land revenue system is divided into two sections. One is called the assessment part, that means in where you assess how much land revenue has to be collected. This in the Mughal sources is known as Jama. Jama means the amount that needs to be collected as land revenue. And then comes the next part, which is collection. So actual collection, how much exactly is being collected, that is known as hasil. So Jama and hasil are the two terms. Jama means assessment, collection means hasil. Now, under Akbar's reign, and all of you know the time period of Akbar's reign, it is from 1556 when he was a 14-year-old boy who sat on throne to 1605 when he died, and later he came to be known as Akbar the Great. But in this time period, this 50 years, very phenomenal changes happen in the structure of land revenue, administration, culture, religion, everything, and that therefore it is important for us to understand this time period. Now, there were multiple ways in which Akbar assessed his revenue and collected his revenue. The first system, and one of the most peasant friendly system, was the Batai system, also known as Galla Bakshi. Now, Batai, if you literally translate it in Hindi, Batai means Batna. It was division between peasant and the state. So you're doing nothing, you're just dividing the produce between peasant and the state. This is further divided into three sections. The first thing is called a Khet Batai, in which after the sowing of land, what do? You divide the land as 1/3 of the king and rest to the peasant. So just after the sowing of the seeds, the land is divided, the land is bataied or batwara hua hai between the king and the peasant. This is known as Khet Batai. That means Khet, the land, is divided between peasant and state. The peasant share is the area from where peasant is going to get the produce, and the state Batai or state Khet is the area from where state is going to collect the revenue. The peasant doesn't care if the state Khet is growing something or not growing something. He did his job in sowing the field. Now it is the state's responsibility. This is a very good system, generally favored in the area where the fertility of the soil is not great or the environmental condition is very erratic, because the king or the state is sharing the burden of failure of crop with the peasant. The next system is known as the Lang Batai. Now, Lang Batai is after the harvesting of the crop. The crop is stacked and then the king share and the peasant share is divided. And the last one is called Batai after threshing. So, after cultivation or after cutting down the crops, you take it to the threshing field, and once you have threshed the crop, you have received the crop. After that, you are dividing. Whatever is mine, whatever is state's, the state is going to take it. The king does not care about how much is left with the peasant does not care how much is with the king. This is the most friendlier system of mechanism for peasants, because here what is happening, like I said, the king is sharing the burden of crop failure, bad weather condition, or let's say a locust infestation with the peasant. The next is Hastobat system. This is an estimation, no measurement, but just an estimate. By looking at how things are, you just make an estimate of land revenue, and you just see whether the crop is good or bad. Land is divided into two categories: good land, bad land. Good land is land which has very good fertility. Bad land is land which does not have good fertility. So land is categorized into good land and bad land, and then you make an estimate out of it. This is a system that was used in primarily those areas where you had the soil as universally fertile or universally bad. This is the best system because there you do not require a lot of assessment, you do not require a lot of looking after what is being grown and what is not being grown. It's just an estimate depending upon how the soil type is, and that's a very simple method. No fuss, not many people involved also, it's just an estimate. Then the next system that we have is the Kankoot system, which is also a grain estimation, but in this what we do is we find the land under cultivation. First, the area under cultivation is measured, properly measured. It is measured how much land is under cultivation. After this, the yield of crop per unit area. So a unit area was decided during the Mughal time period, it was the bigha. So what is the amount of crop grown in 1 bigha of land? That is calculated, and after that an estimate of the revenue was created in 1 bigha of land, and it was then put into the entire areas. This was a more advanced form of revenue assessment, because here what we see is that the king is first measuring. He's not dividing, first he's measuring, he's estimating how much is the estimate that I am going to get from a particular village in a particular year. This is the foundation of the system that we are going to discuss next, which is a very important system, which is the Zapti system. So the Zapt system actually has its root from Sher Shah's time period. It was actually started by Sher Shah. Now, this is a very concrete, very properly calculated system. Here there is no estimate. Rather, it is a proper calculation based system. The first thing that Sher Shah did, and which Akbar also followed, was the entire land revenue mechanism was divided into two sections. The first one is called the crop rate per bigha. So for each crop and for each area, a crop rate per bigha was calculated. Now this crop rate per bigha was calculated in a very systematic manner. Again, first land was measured, thoroughly measured. Every piece of land that is under cultivation was measured in bigha. After this, the land was then calculated on the basis of its yielding capacity. So good, middling, bad. Again, the three system was still in place. The land was divided into good land, middling land, bad land, and average was taken. Now, with that average, crop rate per bigha, which is also known as Rai, is calculated. Now, this Rai is multiplied by the total area and the price of the crop, which is known as the Dastur. So, understand, crop rate per bigha is in crop, then it is multiplied with the total area, and then it is multiplied with what crop have you grown. If you've grown rice, multiplied with the price of the rice which is prevalent in the market. So for quality of land that Akbar decided to take into consideration, there were multiple factors. These factors were based on the productivity of the land, the type of rainfall or irrigation that they receive in a particular area, and also what are the types of implements that are being used in that area. All these factors together led to the definition of the productivity of the area. With this in mind, under Zapti system, Akbar divided land into 4 types. The first land is known as, or first type of land is known as the polage land. Under polage land, this land was always continuously under cultivation. Here the revenue rate were full. Zapti rates that were imposed, they were full Zapti rates collected from polage land. The next type of land was the Paranthi land. In Paranthi land, this land was occasionally left fallow. To regain the fertility of the soil, it was occasionally left fallow. Under this, when the land was under cultivation, full Zapti rates were applied, but when it was not under cultivation, there was no tax that was to be paid. The next type of land was the charter land. Charter land was left fallow for every 2 to 3 years. After every 2 to 3 years, you have to leave the land fallow because the land has to regain its fertility. So we find that revenue rates in charter land were at a concessional rate or a sliding rate. So in first year it will be full, then slowly and steadily it is going to be decreasing with the fertility of the soil going down. The last land that was decided was the Banjar land. As you know, in Hindi, Banjar means a land that does not grow anything. So these are the type of land which is left fallow for more than 5 years. If a land is left fallow for more than 5 years, till the time it is fallow, no revenue. Only when it is under cultivation is, according to the fertility of the soil, a rate of revenue was imposed on them. Now, what is a Dastur circle? Dastur circle is a circle where the revenue is similar or the productivity of the soil is similar. So, according to the productivity of the soil, you have Dastur circles that were created. After this, what Akbar used to do is average productive capacity of land in each Dastur circle was calculated, and with that, on the basis of how much is the average productive capacity of a Dastur land, we find that revenue was then levied. Zapti rate, students, one thing that you have to understand, was always calculated in cash. Not in kind, it was in cash. So how would you convert it in cash? Again, with the prevailing prices of the crops in the market, the revenue was then converted into cash from kind. Now, each year crop rate were calculated in cash. So every year the king would send his people, collect the data about what is the crop rate, and each year you calculated how much is the jama going to be in cash. This is known as, student, Zapti Harsala. Harsala means every year. So every year we have fresh crop rates being calculated, fresh revenue being calculated in cash, and that's what the king would get from each year. Now, one thing that you have to understand in the Zapti system is this is an individual assessment. So, not on a village. Every peasant would be individually assessed. After individual assessment, there would be a contract or a patta would be signed between the peasant and the official who is going to mention it to the peasant how much revenue he has to pay, and this authority that this official has is by the king. So a patta was signed between the peasant and the official, and the collection, whenever the cultivation happen or whenever the jama has to be collected, we would find that these officials are going to look into these pattas, and according to the price stated in the pattas, during the process of collection, they are going to collect the revenue in cash. So understand that pattas were very important. So this is what the Zapti system is all about. Now let's just recapitulate of what we studied so far. We studied the idea of land revenue, whether it is a rent on land or whether it is a tax on produce. Then we studied the magnitude of it. What is the magnitude of revenue under the Mughal Empire? It is 1/3 of the produce. Then we studied the sources that tell us about the land revenue system under the reign of Akbar, which are the Aine Akbari, the Aine Dehsala, the revenue records from each Suba, and finally the royal farmans. After this, we discussed about the other ways of mechanism of land revenue that were present under Akbar. We discussed about the Batai system, we discussed about the Hastobad system, we discussed about the Kankut system, and finally we discussed about the Zapti system. In Zapti system, we discussed about how rais were created, how Dastur was created, how Dastur circles were formed, and how the pattas were signed. In the next lecture, we are going to discuss about the next system that was under Mughal Emperor Akbar, that is the Dehsala system. So next time when we meet, we would be discussing about Dehsala system, but you should keep in mind that it is the Zapti system that will then get advanced into the Dehsala system. Thank you so much.